AITA for supporting my mom and not including my brother's son in her will?
My mom is getting older and wants to create her will. She's still capable herself for the most part and also has a lawyer, but she lives with us anyway, so I help her with a lot of things including this. I have 2 teenagers. My brother has a teenage daughter with his wife of 20 years. However, they briefly separated a decade ago and he has a son, 9M from ONS during that time. They've always had a visitation schedule and we, the extended family, known him since he was a preschooler. But as of a year ago he's living with my brother and his wife full-time as his mother passed away, and is now more integrated into our family. My mom accepts his son as her grandson, as do the rest of us. My mom wants to leave a small property she owns to be split among the grandkids. The assumption is that when the time comes they'll sell it and split the proceeds, since it's not sentimental or easy/convenient to share ownership of.
9M is the sole beneficiary of his mother's death, and is the sole beneficiary of his very elderly but very well-off maternal grandparents. The funds from his mother alone are considerably more than the property my mom owns. So my mother allocated him a token gift but didn't think it made sense for him to be cut in equally to the other 3. It has nothing to do with him being born outside of the marriage or anything like that. My brother found out and demanded his son be cut in equally to the property, not really because the money, he knows as well as we do that 9M doesn't need it, and more because of what it meant symbolically for 9M to not be cut in. My mom repeated that it didn't make practical sense but said if I agreed, she was willing to split it 4 ways instead. But I said no, I agree with her that it's illogical. Let's say the property is worth $200K when my mom passes away, 4 ways that's $50K each, 3 ways that's $67K each. If we were talking about $200 I'd understand, but I can't justify taking $17K from each of my kids' futures for a symbolic gesture. Obviously the exact amount will depend on the market, 200K is just a reference point/current value. I told my brother that I didn't think that was fair to my kids. He said I was being mercenary. AITA? NTA, your mother wants to do what she can to give all of her grandchildren a head start in life. The needs of the youngest child aren't the same as those of the older 3 and your mother is taking that into consideration. That said, perhaps your mother could leave a particularly sentimental item and a letter to the youngest child that expresses her love for him and the reasons behind what she did.
NTA. It's never going to be equal when one kid is going to receive so much more than the other 3. He'll understand if he's not totally entitled. On the flip side, the other 3 are not going to be that understanding about giving up a large chunk of their inheritance to someone that stands to receive more than all 3 of them combined already. Equal is not always fair. And fair is not always equal. This comes up time and time again with inheritances because real life is far more complex and messy than theoretical constructs. Your mom's reasoning is not wrong. And your brother's the off for arguing with what your mom had already decided. Info. What is this token gift? Because that's the real deal breaker. It's very reasonable to not include him in the money division. Because he's not in the same place monetarily, but you need to make sure he's still included in the will in a way that shows he matters. Is he getting something sentimental? Or just average, distant family obligatorily included things? Also, if you do this, your mother needs to include a letter left for him explaining why he isn't included with the money.
You never really know family until you have to divide an inheritance. I'm going through it and there are no winners.
NTA. She is a competent adult who has the right to determine how her assets are allocated after her death. The 9-year-old already has a sizable amount of inheritance. So it makes sense to give the other grandchildren the bulk of her inheritance. The 9-year-old's lineage doesn't really come into play here other than being the mechanism by which he already received a significant inheritance. NTA. Your brother needs to butt out. His kid's future is fully funded by inheritances. He's just being greedy. It's unfortunate that he even found out because he's setting things up for a totally unnecessary rift between his son and the rest of the family. Info. And he has a son. 9M. From aeons during that time. My mom accepts his son as her grandson, as do the rest of us. He is her grandson. Why are y'all acting like he's some sort of outsider? ETA. Those of you who keep responding with, it explains where he's getting the large inheritance. Okay, so? I am not asking about his inheritance. I am asking Op why he feels the need to specify that his nephew is being treated like he is family. Because there is no reason he wouldn't be treated like family. Copy and pasting a response I sent to someone else earlier. Let me put it this way. You go out to eat. And when the waiter sets down your food, he says, unprompted, "I didn't spit in your food." You're going to be a little suspicious. Right? Because you didn't expect him to spit in your food. So there's no reason for him to explicitly tell you he didn't. So why did he say it? NTA. This is an equity versus equality debate. Equality is splitting the property 4 ways. Equity is about giving the people who have less more to make up the gap. Equity is more fair than equality. Brother's child is 9 right now and can't be expected to understand why an equitable decision is more fair. Brother, however, is an adult. From what I can see, he is the one being greedy here. He wants to take money from kids who have less. I think your mother should also leave the 9-year-old some extra sentimental items to make up for the lack of money he will be getting. Some stuff to show that she really loved and cared, but saw this as the best way to give all her grandkids a good start in life. Nah, your mother can split the money between 3 of her grandchildren. Your mother can then leave a special note for your 9-year-old nephew and leave him a special memento. In her will, she can include something like this in her will and her note. I love all my grandchildren equally. Since my grandson X already has inherited money from other family members, I've decided to split my property between my other 3 grandchildren. I want all my grandchildren to have money to use for their futures. Because I am not leaving X my property that can be sold. I want to leave him ABC as a reminder of how much I love and treasure him as I do all my grandchildren. Controversial, but I'm leaning towards a nah. It's ultimately your mother's choice, and I understand wanting to make sure your children are in a more beneficial position. That being said, she and you are, whether you intend to or not, sending a message to your nephew. I can understand being upset about that, so I get where your brother is coming from. Because he's starting off with inheritance from the mother and grandparents. Your kids could use the money more. 67K as a college degree, a car or house. To the 9-year-old with money, this just adds to his growing wealth. He'll have all that already paid for by other people. He's not being ignored in the will, just not getting money. Was already leaning NTA, but it depended a little on exactly how much he'd inherited. After seeing your comment saying his mother has left him a mid-6-figure amount with more to be inherited from grandparents, I'm comfortable saying NTA. He's pretty well set from the sound of it, and then money being divided from your mom would be a negligible addition to him, but a major addition to what the other grandkids would be receiving. NTA. This one took me a bit longer to think about. I do see where some folks are coming from. That the little one might feel like he was excluded from it because his parentage is disputed, or whatever. However, it seems this is not the case at all. It's actually just a practical matter. The elder 3 will have different opportunities and needs than the young one because he's not only of a completely different age, but also, he's already on track to be a wealthy individual based on his mother's wealth, which he's already entitled to and inherited, and expects, and his grandparents' wealth, to give him more. Just to symbolically say he's equal doesn't actually practically end up being fair to the elder 3. If their grandmother and the whole family treats 9M like he's a full grandchild, Which of course he is. Then the symbolism of splitting the property is not. The money isn't going to be what makes me feel like he's a member of the family. It's how you treat him all along. I'd even bet if you explained up front and honestly also to each of the grandkids, there really wouldn't even be a dispute. It actually would set them up to be better people. It's not favoritism. It's actually trying your best to put them on more equal footing. And your mom can even stipulate in the will that she's leaving him something special and sentimental, which in the long run might even mean more than a property you only expect them to sell. Money is money and it is transient. But memories and love are forever. Do right by that baby. And all the grandkids. Throughout y'all lives, and you'll be better off than worrying about who gets what when someone dies.
If she doesn't leave him money, she should leave him something of sentimental value. Also, he is her 100% grandson, and your 100% nephew, and your children's 100% cousin.
Info. If one of your kids gets a really high-paying job or win the lottery, will you advocate for them to be cut out? I get that this makes logical sense, but people are not driven by logic when dividing an estate. They're grieving and emotional. This will cause friction between the grandkids and has the potential to irreparably destroy their relationships with each other. Easily NTA. Why would the 9-year-old with $300K need to take a chunk of the $200K estate? It makes more sense to divide it up amongst the grandkids whose individual net worth isn't already more than the entire property value. Equity, not equality. Nah, I get what she's trying to do. It sounds like she's trying to line it up so that her grandchildren have a good nest egg to jump, start their life, possibly buy a house, help pay towards college. With that in mind, it's understandable to not factor in the one with a considerably larger nest egg. Already, it sounds like it wouldn't make a dent in his overall inheritance amount from your comments of all of his totaling over $1.5 million. An extra $50K really pales in comparison, whereas an extra $16K for the rest could mean a lot. That being said, this is going to come off as hurtful to him BC of the symbolic meaning behind him not being included. I get where his father is coming from. I would probably do the same in your grandmother's shoes and leave a letter for him explaining my reasoning on wanting the other kids to have a good financial start that they would lack otherwise. And leave him more sentimental items, family heirlooms that won't be immediately sold for cash like the property. I don't think there's an equitable solution. But I also don't think she's wrong to want to leave money to those who will actually be needing it. By the sounds of things, she just needs to take extra steps to factor his emotions, feelings in. Because doing it blindly will unnecessarily hurt him. It is your mother's decision. He will most likely feel left out, and that will affect the relationship of the grandchildren. You want more for your kids. I get that. But if you all accept him and love him, personal relationships are worth prioritizing over money. Money you can make infinite amounts, good family relationships are finite. I'm going to go against the grain and say NTA. I do think it's important that the son be included in other ways to make sure he doesn't feel unloved. But there's a practical aspect in play that people are ignoring. For context, I come from a family where something similar happened. Due to a death, one child inherited more than their cousins. So, to balance things out, it was decided that that child wouldn't receive large cash inheritances from older family members, so that cash could be given to said cousins. The goal was to balance things out so all these children could receive an equal amount of support and get an equally good start in life. Notably, I might feel differently if the property was meant to stay in the family so people could stay there on vacations or whatnot. But since it's earmarked for sale, the cash should go to the children who have less so they can get a good start in life that the son already has. Automod, thanks for posting. This comment is a copy of your post so readers can see the original text if your post is edited or removed. This comment is not accusing you of copying anything. Read this before contacting the mod team. My mom is getting older and wants to create her will. She's still capable herself for the most part and also has a lawyer. But she lives with us anyway, so I help her with a lot of things including this. I have 2 teenagers. My brother has a teenage daughter with his wife of 20 years. However, they briefly separated a decade ago and he has a son, 9M, from AANS during that time. They've always had a visitation schedule and we, the extended family, known him since he was a preschooler. But as of a year ago he's living with my brother and his wife full-time as his mother passed away, and is now more integrated into our family. My mom accepts his son as her grandson, as do the rest of us. My mom wants to leave a small property she owns to be split among the grandkids. The assumption is that when the time comes they'll sell it and split the proceeds, since it's not sentimental or easy, convenient to share ownership of. 9M is the sole beneficiary of his mother's death, and is the sole beneficiary of his very elderly but very well-off maternal grandparents. So my mother allocated him a token gift but didn't think it made sense for him to be cut in equally to the other 3. It has nothing to do with him being born outside of the marriage or anything like that. My brother found out and demanded his son be cut in equally to the property. Not really because the money. He knows as well as we do that 9M doesn't need it. And more because of what it meant symbolically for 9M to not be cut in. My mom repeated that it didn't make practical sense but said if I agreed, she was willing to split it 4 ways instead. But I said no. I agree with her that it's illogical. Let's say the property is worth $200K when my mom passes away. 4 ways, that's $50K each. 3 ways, that's $67K each. If we were talking about $200 I'd understand. But I can't justify taking $17K from each of my kids' futures for a symbolic gesture. Obviously the exact amount will depend on the market. $200K is just a reference point, current value. I told my brother that I didn't think that was fair to my kids. He said I was being mercenary. AITA? I am a bot. And this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. AmITheAsshole is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.